Like, let's be so for real, everybody. This is negligence, if I've ever seen it. Welcome back to another wonderful review of Wonderful Precure. Today we're getting into episode 38. This is going to be a Komugi Iroha episode, and honestly, it's pretty cute. I feel like we've had some really heavy hitter episodes, and I was kind of surprised that we're still getting another heavy hitter in a row, but honestly, this was kind of sweet, and it didn't get as dramatic as it could have been. Like, this absolutely could have been the plotline for a finale, but it kind of is this, like, heartfelt moment that's a bit of a tide over as we continue on with the story, especially since the next few episodes look like they're going to go back to being very much about the plot of the story. Without further ado, we start off with Komugi and Iroha bonding. I also wanted to put out there too that one of the fears that people had from the previous episodes was that Iroha and Satoru were going to completely eclipse the story with their romance. There is pretty much nothing in regards to their romance in this episode. They're just together and it's chill and it's not really the focus of this episode, so I wanted to put that out there. That they can write a show where two characters are together and it's not going to cause problems for the rest of the plot. Now, one thing that I like that this episode does is it kind of uses the heart bit that we've seen before. So one of the big things that people were asking was, why do Komugi and Yuki have hearts on the back of their heads? And in an interview, it was later revealed that that's only really there as a cosmetic sign for when kids play with the toys. So if you want Komugi or Yuki to talk, you have to press the heart. It basically is just something to get the kids to know how to use the toy. And then obviously it translates to the show. But in this episode, they made the heart purposeful. They're like, we were able to identify who Komugi is, or in this case, Maran, based on the fact that she has a heart on the back of her head, and that's just kind of a unique thing, which I love that they made it worthwhile. Obviously, they can't really do that with Yuki, especially since Yuki came from a completely different location, but I'm glad that they made it work here. And of course, the person who spots Komugi is this nice shelter worker who comes by and is like, oh my god, that's Maran, the dog we lost 2 years ago, which also gives us a bit more of a timestamp. I don't know if they've ever said straight up when Komugi was found by Iroha, but at this point we know that her relationship with Iroha is essentially 2 years in length. We also get to see baby Komugi photos, because I mean, like, we deserve something nice every so often, and this is an absolute treat that we get these little tiny Komugi photos. She was really cute as a puppy. Like, look at her. Like, she already looks like a little puppy, but that's just because her dog breeds teeny. We have the whole family sit down. They're like, what do you mean this is Maran-chan? Like, what's going on? Who are you? And she explains that she works at a shelter where they take care of animals that can no longer be cared for by their owners. Also, I just thought the dad looked real goofy. Like, I know it's the way his eyes are drawn, but, like, it does not work when it's zoomed out. He looks like he has seen things. But one fateful day after Komugi was picked up or released from her previous owner, the shelter honestly kind of sucks. Like, what's up with this? How did Komugi successfully get out of this kennel? And then also go out the window that was open? Like, let's be so for real, everybody. This is negligence, if I've ever seen it. Like, Miss Ma'am, Komugi got away because you were a bad shelter carer. You were breaking all the rules. It's like, did we not see Komugi? Komugi was in a really bad shape, because at first I thought she came from maybe an abusive home or something, but, like, it's just straight up because she got out and was desperately looking for her owner. Which also does remind me of my own first cat that I had. We, very fortunately, moved about a block away from my old house because it was sinking into the ground and we needed to move, and my parents didn't really want to leave the neighborhood, so we just moved to a neighboring house that was, like, all of, like, 2 streets up from it. My cat ran away to our old house at least 4 times, and I cannot tell you the level of duress it put me under, but also thank everything that we lived very close to the previous house, because we were able to find my cat every single time. But it was very stressful. We have Iroha here, who's very conflicted about the potential of Komugi going back to her original owner, but she's taking it kind of like a champ. She's very much like, let's go visit your first owner. Let's go see them. Like, you deserve those, like, because this is honestly one of the most intense plot lines for any kind of story, as well as just a huge issue that you can come across in reality where your pet may have belonged to somebody else. There's plenty of people who just, like, you know, come across a lost, hurt animal and they're like, you're part of the family now. But there's always a chance that they are just some pet that got lost from their true owners. I've had that happen to my neighbors before. It's really intense and it's very, very sad. And ooh, it's just so many emotions go into a conflict like this. And again, Iroha is taking it like a champ. But we also see that it weighs on her mind. She kind of puts on a brave face in front of Komugi, but she's genuinely, like, real sad. And it makes me sad. The conflict. And even Komugi's like, who doesn't fully understand this situation, is also like, I'm a bit sad. I'm a bit conflicted. Wait. And then there's Niko, who I think it's very interesting, especially since Niko says nothing and we just constantly get shots of Niko's judgment in the corner of a lot of episodes. But I bet this is kind of interesting for Niko to experience because I'm sure, again, as I have been theorizing at this point and acting like it's canon, Niko has sat here and been like, I moved all these animals away from humanity because humanity sucks. I can't believe that we're having a conflict where there's a dog that is owned by two different people. There's two humans that could both love Komugi and be happy. I feel like that's gotta be a shocker for her. And then kind of what the plot twist of this episode is that Yuki cheers her up. Yuki is like, hey Komugi, you know who you love, and you know that regardless of what happens today, you know who you're gonna go with, you gotta follow your heart. Cause like, we know how much Komugi loves Iroha. And then we see her previous owner, who turns out to be a man who is elderly and also likely to be suffering health problems given that he's in a wheelchair, which is probably why he ultimately surrendered Komugi. And then we have Komugi who's like, I don't know if I want to see this guy. I'm like, I'm pretty loyal to Iroha. Surely I will not become this man's dog. Like, you know, I have my girl. But after getting pet by him, she does have these residual memories of, oh yeah, this was somebody who I spent my life with before, who's very sweet and kind. I also really like the, kind of the dichotomy of what Komugi was like with him and then what she grew up into being with Iroha, where she previously was a very shy dog who didn't like eating, who turned into a dog who really loved eating and then is very outgoing. And then we kind of get this moment for Iroha, which I think is really big because Iroha has always been a character who's done a lot for other people. I think that's been one of the biggest kind of hesitancy that people have had with her in the fandom, is that so much of Iroha's existence has been to help other people and to make their lives better and to solve their problems and fix their issues. And there's not been a lot of her being herself. There's not a lot of like seeing her own issues, seeing her own conflict, but it feels like the story's finally gone in the direction of giving her her own spotlight. Especially since we just went through the whole Satoru arc. It's nice to see her also sit there and be like, I like Komugi and I don't really want to give her up. Like, even if Komugi would be happy with this guy, as Medon, she is happy as Komugi. She lives a happy life and she would prefer that she continue to be the owner of Komugi, and I'm glad that she stands up for herself in this situation. And it's just so heartfelt. And she just goes through all of the times and how much she's changed her life. Especially since she brings up the promise that she made with her mother, which was that, like, you know, don't get too attached to Komugi. She has an original owner. But I like that she takes her stand and she really showcases the bond that she's had and the effort that she's ultimately put into owning Komugi and being the best dog friend in the world. And then, of course, we switch over to our fight moment in the episode. We end up fighting a stoat that is summoned by Torome, and we see a bit of that stress still persisting in Friendy as this fight goes down. However, Wonderful ultimately reaches her own conclusion that she wants to be with Iroha. Even if she spent this time as Medon, she is Iroha's best friend. And we have this moment where she just kind of reaffirms to Friendy that this is what she wants, and this is the life she's going to live. We also get to see her use the rabbit kittening animal. I'm trying to remember if she ever used it before, because this was... I feel like they got the rabbit back when she couldn't use the friendly tact, so I think this is her first time actually using the kittening rabbit. Correct me if I'm wrong, they might have used it some earlier episode. But it's cute to see it back, and it looks good on Wonderful. And the fight sequence for this is kind of goofy, where Komugi, like, just guesses where the stoat's going to be. And the stoat just kind of is like, oh man, and gives up. Like, I feel like I'm watching an episode of Dora the Explorer and we just defeated Swiper. He just is like, oh, you got me. And then they purify him. I'm like, okay, I guess that's how we're solving that problem. He's also really tiny. Like, look at this little guy. He's just a little dude. And with that concluded, we go back to the old man, in which Komugi runs up as human Komugi and hugs him, and he's confused, but then we have our typical, like, oh, it's Animal Town, weird stuff happens, I guess this is the same dog, and Komugi is able to articulate in words that she'd rather stay with Iroha, but she also really cares for him and appreciates the time that they spent together. And it just kind of has this, like, nice, heartwarming, feel-good thing. I think they made the best decision for this plotline, especially with it not being, like, a big tail-end storyline by any means, to have it be a guy who, honestly, probably still couldn't care for Komugi in his current state. So it was never going to be much of a fight to say who keeps Komugi. And we finish off this episode with the reveal of human Niko-sama, which caught a lot of people off guard. I'm surprised that they're doing this. I'm surprised that she's been able to return to her human form, which I guess she technically could do before when she stood, like, was briefly in front of the mirror stone and just, like, transformed for, like, half a second and we just saw her shadow. I guess she's just been able to do this for a hot minute and just didn't feel like telling anybody. But it's cool. I guess her magic's coming back probably because we've been saving all the animals. And see her look on with this praise. It's interesting too because they dropped this screenshot. I don't know if this was a leak, but because it had like the official logo and everything on it. They showcased this image like this past week leading into this episode. And we know that she's going to show up next episode in her human form given the title of the episode. But like, I was like, this has to be somehow in this episode. We have to see her in her human form this episode because why would they give us a screenshot for an episode 2 weeks later? But nonetheless, here she is. I do also, speaking of 2 weeks later, I do need to check, because I do think we're gonna get a break from Precure for a hot minute. I don't know if it's, we're not getting an episode next week, or we're not getting an episode following the Halloween episode. I think we go on break after the Halloween episode. But yeah, next episode looks like it's gonna be pretty plot heavy. This episode was just kind of a feel-good episode. I think it did a good job in improving, or just letting us see more of Iroha's character. It also just gave Komugi / Wonderful a little bit more spotlight too, since she seems to be more relevant in the actual like story-oriented episodes and not as much in the character episodes these days. But it felt like both of the characters were in the spotlight as they needed to be and sorted out their feelings regarding this matter. And overall, I think it was just a pretty solid episode. I really like the way this series is going. The pacing for me is fantastic. Other than having certain characters not be cures, that's my only grievance with the show, but that is beside the point. It's been a good show, and I'm really happy to get back on track for the story. I'm really happy to see where we're gonna go with Gao and Niko-sama, and even more reveals for the past. It's been a very solid season. And until next time, I guess I'll see you later. Bye bye!